Can a person who has wasted most of their life truly change?
That is well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. And welcome to our deep dive. Today, our mission is to analyze a stack of essays that extract some honestly profound real-world life lessons from a rather unexpected source.
Yeah, a very unexpected source for a lot of people.
Right. We're talking about the hit anime Mushoku Tensei. Now, if you aren't familiar, the basic premise follows a 34-year-old unemployed, deeply isolated man who tragically dies and is reincarnated into a fantasy world of swords and sorcery.
Right, and if we just stop the summary right there, it sounds like your standard escapism.
Oh, totally. Just someone escaping a failed life to become a magical hero.
Exactly. But the true appeal of this story, the reason we're doing this deep dive, isn't the overpowered magic or the sprawling fantasy landscapes.
Yeah.
It's actually the protagonist, Rudeus, making this incredibly gritty, almost desperate vow to simply live seriously this time. It's essentially a heavy psychological drama that just happens to be dressed up as a fantasy adventure.
The analogy that just kept coming to my mind while reading through these sources is, well, it's like finding a corrupted save file in a video game.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right, like you've completely ruined your playthrough, you made all the wrong choices, you alienated every single character, and you just hit a total dead end.
Yeah, you're stuck.
But instead of just hitting reset and starting completely fresh, the game forces you to play from the very beginning with the visceral, agonizing memory of every single terrible, humiliating mistake you made the first time around.
That sounds exhausting, actually. But yeah, he gets a new body, sure. But he entirely retains his old mind.
Which is heavy.
It is. And to understand why his transformation in this new world carries so much weight for you as the audience, we really first have to look at the massive amount of baggage he drags into it.
Right, because before he reincarnates, his life is practically a textbook bad ending. The sources break down his past life with just brutal honesty.
Yeah, they don't pull punches.
No, they don't. He died full of this intense regret, feeling completely powerless and carrying this deep, irritation at his own lifelong inaction.
He was a complete shut-in.
Exactly. The isolation was so absolute that he even skipped his own parents' funeral.
Which is just devastating.
Right. He was just hiding from reality, completely paralyzed by his own failures.
And there's this very specific detail from the source material regarding the root of his downfall that I think is so fascinating.
Oh, about the computer skills.
Yeah. So in his past life, he developed this incredibly toxic sense of elitism simply because he had basic computer skills.
Like just standard stuff.
Right. But he used that tiny marginal advantage to build an entirely unearned arrogance. He just started looking down on everyone else.
Wow.
And that superiority complex is what ultimately ruined his life and drove everyone away.
It's actually a classic example of compensatory narcissism.
Oh, right, yeah.
When someone feels fundamentally inadequate at their core, they often latch onto any small, totally trivial advantage to construct this fortress of superiority.
To protect themselves.
Exactly. They build the walls incredibly high because the foundation is entirely rotten, and when those fragile walls inevitably shatter, they are left with absolutely nothing.
Which just drives them further into that isolation.
Right. But I have to say, I was struggling a bit with this part of the source's logic.
How so?
Well, if someone literally gets a brand new brain and a brand new body in a magical world, why wouldn't the slate be wiped clean?
Ah, I see what you mean.
Right. Shouldn't the physical reboot basically fix all those mental bugs? If you can suddenly shoot water out of your hands and you have this loving family, why does that old arrogance or that old fear even matter anymore? You're essentially a new biological person.
And that assumption right there is exactly where the story subverts all the typical fantasy tropes of the clean slate.
Because it doesn't work that way.
No, a new body does not cure an old mind.
Yeah.
You have to think about it in terms of neuroplasticity and trauma.
Right.
Even though his physical brain is new, his consciousness, the software carrying his memories, it imports the exact same neural firing patterns of fear and habit from his previous life.
Oh, wow. So the trauma transfers over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't just magically reincarnate away a phobia. The story is emphatically not some breezy second chance where everything is suddenly easy.
That makes a lot of sense. Rudeus still faces intense fear. He experiences deep embarrassment and massive, massive setbacks.
Yeah. especially regarding the outside world.
Right. His trauma regarding the outside world, the very trauma that made him a shut-in-it, literally paralyzes him. Even with a new magical body, just stepping out of his front yard causes him sheer blinding panic.
And there's this highly relatable detail from the essays that highlights just how stubborn the brain is.
Oh, the lazy voice.
Yes.
No.
Even after he makes his grand, sweeping vow to live seriously, his inner lazy voice still whispers to him constantly.
I love that detail. It's so real.
It is. He hits a minor milestone, like learning a new spell, and that voice immediately chimes in like, well, isn't this enough? Can't we just take it easy now? You did a good job today. Let's slack off.
Which is just the human brain seeking homeostasis, right? Biologically, we are wired to conserve energy and retreat to what's comfortable and familiar.
Precisely. The brain views change, even positive change, as a major threat to its energy reserves.
So overcoming that requires immense conscious friction.
Massive amounts of it.
Yeah.
And how he actually overcomes that paralyzing fear of the outside world is crucial, because it wasn't his loving parents, Paolo and Zenith, who saved him.
Which is surprising because you would normally expect the power of a parent's love to be the cure-all in a narrative like this.
Right, but they were too close to the situation. They couldn't understand the depth of a trauma they didn't share, and their proximity created a massive blind spot.
So who does it?
It took his magic tutor, Roxy, an outside mentor who had faced her own intense struggles with discrimination and being an outcast, to literally pull him out of his front yard. She represented the outside world, but a safe, empathetic version of it. It's essentially exposure therapy facilitated by someone who fundamentally understands the mechanics of being marginalized.
So if magic can't fix his psychology, he basically has to rely on pragmatic, mechanical choices to build his new self.
Exactly.
The sources point out that his transformation isn't some quick magical training montage. It's the daily, grueling accumulation of small actions.
Small, deliberate choices.
Yeah, let's look at how he reframes success, actually, because this directly targets that toxic arrogance from his past life.
Or the bowling analogy.
Yes. When he first discovers he has immense magical talent in this new world, instead of getting a massive ego boost, he actively forces himself to treat it as beginner's luck.
Right.
The source uses a great analogy where he compares his early magical success to a first-time bowler who just happens to luckily roll a strike. He tells himself, you aren't a master, you just threw the ball and got lucky.
And by rejecting that ego boost, he's actively short-circuiting his own defense mechanisms.
Right, he refuses to build another fragile fortress of superiority.
He forces himself to maintain the mindset of a student. And we see this mechanical approach applied to how he handles failure too.
How so?
Well, drawing from those past failures where he constantly lied and made excuses just to save face, he creates a strict rule for himself. Choose sincere accountability.
No excuses.
Right. He apologizes immediately and cleanly.
You know, the psychology behind a clean apology is fascinating. When you make an excuse, you are essentially trying to protect your own social status.
Right.
But cheap excuses create cognitive dissonance in the listener. They see right through it and trust erodes.
Yeah, they know you're dodging.
Exactly. So when you apologize cleanly, without qualifiers, you sacrifice your immediate status to preserve the relationship. That realization that cheap excuses permanently destroy trust shows a massive leap in his emotional intelligence.
And he extends that exact same grace to others, which is a huge step for someone who used to look down on people.
Oh, with Rock.
Yeah, there's a moment where his mentor, Roxy, makes a pretty big mistake.
Yeah.
And instead of mocking her or acting superior, he reframes it for her.
I remember this.
He tells her she didn't fail, she just gained experience.
That reframing tool is incredible. It creates an environment of psychological safety. It literally lowers the stakes of failure for everyone around him.
Which feeds perfectly into the concept of agile thinking highlighted in the sources.
Right.
Instead of sitting in his room agonizing over whether a spell will work perfectly or if he's doing it the optimal way, he just acts.
He just does it.
Yeah, he bypasses the amygdala's fear of failure by lowering the stakes. He values the rapid accumulation of small achievements, trying, failing, adjusting over perfection.
And that agile action is how he slowly rebuilds his completely shattered self-worth.
Absolutely.
These internal mechanisms definitely lay the groundwork, but I feel like the story truly hits home when these personal changes collide with messy adult relationships and the reality of aging.
Oh,
This is exactly why a story about a magical fantasy world resonates so deeply with adult audiences. It deals heavily with the urgency of time and the pain of lost opportunities.
right. Because Rudeus skipped his parents' funeral in his past life, he is acutely, painfully aware that filial piety, showing gratitude to the people who care about you, has to happen right now.
Not someday.
Exactly, not someday. The trauma of that missed funeral really drives him. He understands now that someday is a luxury that doesn't actually exist.
And that urgency translates into a really powerful lesson from his new father, Paolo. Paolo deeply regrets a fight he had with his own father, a fight that never got resolved before his father passed away.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
The lesson the source extracts here is about setting an expiration date on anger. Think about the sunk cost fallacy in arguments. We fight for so long that admitting we're wrong feels like a massive waste of all that emotional effort.
Right, you just dig your heels in.
Exactly. We hold on to grudges just to preserve our pride.
But Paolo's experience proves that preserving your pride in an argument is absolutely never worth the cost of lifelong regret.
Never.
And Paolo also warns Rudeus about the biological realities of time. He talks about the human golden age.
The golden age, yeah.
That window of your life where your physical energy, your neuroplasticity, your capacity to absorb new skills is at its absolute peak.
Right, the window where learning a language or mastering a physical skill is just objectively easier for your brain and body.
Exactly. Paolo warns him that this window is painfully short. You have to run like crazy and invest in yourself while you still have the energy and the time, because the biological door of optimal growth closes much faster than anyone anticipates in their youth.
Which is terrifying, but true.
Right.
We all logically know these universal truths, right? We know we should appreciate our parents, not hold grudges, work hard while we're young.
Right. It's basic stuff.
But seeing these truths through the lens of a fantasy anime makes it finally click for the audience. And you have to wonder why that is. I think it's because we get to see the devastating, unfixable cost of the bad ending first.
Oh, absolutely. The story establishes the absolute suffocating misery of his past life where he ignored all those universal truths.
Yeah.
And because we witnessed that absolute failure, the lessons in his new life carry the heavy weight of survival.
Right.
It bypasses our typical cynical defenses against self-help advice because we've seen the literal consequence of ignoring it. It's not just a nice idea anymore, it's a lifeline.
It really is. And surviving the emotional trauma of his past actually equips him with a surprisingly ruthless, strategic mindset for the real world.
It does.
The sources pull out these highly pragmatic life lessons that apply just as much to surviving a corporate office as they do a fantasy wasteland.
Take how he recycles his quote-unquote useless experience.
Oh, the gaming stuff.
Right. In his past life, he just played video games all day. But he takes that gaming knowledge, resource management, anticipating enemy strategies, leveling up systematically, and translates it into a legitimate tactical weapon in his new life.
Which is such a good lesson. Think about your own seemingly useless hobbies. The source basically argues that nothing you've experienced is truly wasted if you can figure out how to connect the dots.
Right. It's an exercise in lateral thinking.
Exactly. You abstract the underlying mechanics of what you know and apply it to an entirely new domain.
And that same pragmatism applies to relationships, too. Paolo offers some deeply insightful advice about the danger of perfection.
Oh, I found this part so interesting.
Yeah, he essentially teaches Rudeus that a perfect person isn't loved. To build a genuine bond, you have to show weakness so the other person feels needed.
The source author actually shared a personal anecdote about exactly this.
Right, about his ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. He wrote about a past relationship where he tried to be the perfect boyfriend. He did all the chores, he never complained, he never showed stress, even when his job was totally crushing him. He genuinely thought he was being the ultimate partner.
And what happened?
Ultimately, his girlfriend left him. And her specific reason was, "You don't need me."
Wow.
Right? By trying to be a flawless fortress, he didn't leave any doors open for her to enter and actually support him.
Because a relationship is a dynamic exchange of vulnerabilities.
Yes.
If you are entirely self-sufficient emotionally and practically, the other person basically just becomes a spectator in your life rather than a true partner.
Exactly.
And Paolo gives another warning along these lines, focusing on seeing through facades. He tells Rudeus that noble women will hide behind tight corsets and heavy makeup, projecting this highly curated image of flawless high society.
Right.
Paolo warns him that you have to look past the performance and look for the true essence of a person.
And the source author drops another incredibly relatable real-world anecdote here to illustrate this. He talks about visiting his ex-wife's house for the very first time when they were just dating.
Oh, the TV stand.
Yeah. At a glance, the place looked totally fine, very presentable. But then he noticed the TV stand was covered in a really thick layer of dust.
Right.
And when he gently brought it up, she casually admitted that her vacuum had been broken for 6 months and she just hadn't bothered to replace it or find another way to clean.
It's a masterclass in observing front stage versus backstage behavior.
Exactly.
The front stage, the general tidiness, is curated for guests, but the dusty TV stand reveals the backstage reality, which is a lack of systemic maintenance.
Yeah, it's not about the dust itself.
No, it's an indicator of how that person handles friction and invisible chores when life gets stressful. If you don't develop the critical eye to spot those behavioral patterns, you'll be constantly fooled by the metaphorical corsets and makeup.
Spotting those patterns is vital, but sometimes you have to actively disrupt patterns to save a relationship.
Oh, for sure.
Which brings us to a really pragmatic lesson from Paulo about breaking the comfort zone to prevent codependency. Paulo forcefully separates Rudeus from his childhood friend, Sylphie.
Right.
He literally sends him away to work as a tutor in another region. And at the time, it seems incredibly cruel.
But Paulo recognized that staying in that comfortable, sleepy village would eventually completely stunt Rudeus's growth.
Yeah.
And more importantly, he saw the systemic issue forming. Rudeus and Sylphie were developing a deeply toxic codependency.
Sylphie was relying on him for everything.
Everything. To the point where her own development had completely halted. She was basically becoming a satellite orbiting his life.
Yeah, and true love and true education sometimes requires introducing intentional friction.
Yeah, it does.
By pushing someone out of the nest, you force them to expand their capacity to handle the world. If you never leave the comfort zone, your psychological immune system never develops.
Right.
Paulo forced that expansion, even though it made him the villain in the short term.
So, if we synthesize this entire journey we've been discussing today, Rudeus's story fundamentally isn't about the luck of getting a new magical life.
Yeah.
The magic is almost incidental. It's actually about the relentless, unglamorous daily choices required to completely rewrite your own operating system.
It's the choice to force yourself to be humble when every instinct tells you to brag.
Yeah.
The choice to sacrifice your pride and apologize when it's just so much easier to lie. The choice to maintain your relationships today rather than putting them off until a tomorrow that might not come.
Exactly.
And the choice to force yourself out of your comfort zone so you don't stagnate.
Distilling all these essays down to a single point reveals the core message. The true fantasy of Mushoku Tensei is not reincarnation.
Yeah.
It's the possibility that people can still change. It's the radical idea that no matter how much time you've wasted, no matter how deep the regrets are that you carry, the mechanics of change are still available to you if you are just willing to do the deeply uncomfortable work of facing yourself.
The mechanics of change are still available. That is powerful. We'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. If you were to treat today, right this very second, as your own reincarnation, your blank slate, but you still carry all the memories and baggage of your past mistakes, what is the very first uncomfortable choice you would make today to prove to yourself that you've actually changed?